Right, a few things to get through in this video, so bear with me. We've got a tyre conspiracy to sort out at the end, and a little bit of news about Norton, but first off, Norton Customs. Now, here in Blighty, we're back on lockdown again. I know a lot of other countries have already been put on lockdown. Some countries, I'm told, never came off lockdown. It's not a great time for motorcycling, but we're not going to let it get us down. Now, there's not a real lot that I can do to make things better for you, but I do have a little bit of influence with Norton Customs. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I had a word with Sam at Norton and managed to negotiate a bit more of a discount, just to take the sting out of this lockdown a little bit. So I approached Sam, I had a word with him, I explained, let's see if we can just boost people's spirits a little bit. How about a little bit more discount, even if it's only for 2 or 3 days. Now, Sam thought it was a good idea, but for most of this year, as a favour to this channel, he has been giving out 15% discount to all my viewers. And he explained that there was a limit to what he could do. Now, fair dues, Sam's got a living to make, he's got staff to pay. I suggested maybe a 17% discount, but he was having none of it. He countered my offer with 20%. There was a bit of toing and froing, but to cut a long story short, I eventually managed to beat him down to 19% discount from this morning until 12 PM on Monday evening using the discount code LOCKDOWN19. I'll leave the discount code in the video description down below, and that's 19% off any Norton product currently on their site, which I thought was a very good result. You're welcome. Oh, hang on a minute. Right, we'll get onto this tyre conspiracy thing in a minute, but first of all, Norton. I had a word with them 2 or 3 weeks ago, and to be honest, it completely slipped my mind. I forgot to mention it. As I predicted back at the beginning of this year when the whole Norton thing was unfolding, Norton are about to shut down their current manufacturing facility and move. Now, if you remember, after this fiasco with Stuart Garner, Norton has now been bought out by TVS, an Indian motorcycle manufacturer. And I sort of predicted that they were likely to move production, at least of the Atlas series motorcycles, to India. It was, after all, made quite clear that they only took out a 6-month lease on the old premises in Leicestershire. Now, I mooted at the time that the Atlas for a 650cc bike was just too expensive, at around £11,000 or £12,000 each, depending which model you go for. And I was struggling to see how these bikes are going to sell. So I theorised that they may sort of water these models down, take production to India, and perhaps get the retail price down to a point where it may be competitive with the likes of the Royal Enfield Interceptor. I have to say I was totally and completely wrong. Now, I'm not allowed to say where in the UK they're moving to, but they are simply moving premises to another location in the UK. As it stands at the moment, they are concentrating on fulfilling and honouring the orders that were already on the books when they took over the company, with production of the Atlas series to commence in the second half of next year. And it was confirmed to me that the rather high asking price for the Atlas series is going to remain in place. They're not going to be watered down. As soon as I get any more news, I'll be sure to update you. Now, week before last, I think it was, I can't remember, all these weeks just run into one, I made a little video about the Phantom sportscomp tyres on the Interceptor and on some of the Bonneville models. A very dependable tyre, tried and trusted. Some people like them, some people don't. Now, the reason I made this video is because for about 2 years now, I've been getting constant comments and emails asking me, you know, what tyre should I swap them for. I've been told these tyres are dangerous in the wet. I've been told that they're no good. I'm going to have them taken off at the dealership before I take delivery of the bike. What tyres should I replace them with? It's a ridiculous situation. And as a result of it, I made two quite major decisions. One is that I will no longer be answering questions by email or on Messenger or through any other channel except through my Patreon page. As I've said before, at the end of the day, patrons are helping to support this channel financially, so I will continue to give them support if they have any questions. But if you approach me through any other channel and you're not a patron, I won't respond to you. End of. And the other decision that I made was that obviously I need to tackle this problem and make a video, because somewhere along the line social media is leading people up the garden path and it needs to be put right. And the video basically just laid out a few facts, a bit of common sense, and I tried to encourage people to think for themselves and just try these tyres out before making any decisions that are going to cost them a lot of money. And I thought that would probably just at least slow down the incidence of these silly emails that I'm receiving and just encourage people to be a little bit more rational. Now, as I've said, in a past career I was an accident investigator. Now, if things got complicated, we did have the VIB, or Vehicle Investigation Branch, to sort of forensically examine vehicles where it was thought that a fault with the vehicle may have caused an accident. I'd often have to liaise with these guys and I learned quite a lot from them. And surprise, surprise, tyres came into these investigations quite a lot. Now, when a manufacturer designs and builds a new tyre, he can't just put it on vehicles on the road and that's that. These tyres have to go through standards testing, they have to be approved. And if they're looking at selling these tyres internationally, they have to go through type approval and standards testing in every country where that tyre is likely to be sold. This can take years and it can also cost millions of pounds to get those tyres through that type approval. And although slight variations are allowed in the specifications of those tyres, and I mean slight, once that make and model of tyre has been approved, nothing can be changed without going through that entire type approval process again. Now, after I posted that video the other week, my mind was well and truly blown. I thought that I had covered every base, but I hadn't, because some social media somewhere had presented information suggesting that the tyres fitted to the Interceptor were in some way substandard. They're not a real Pirelli Phantom Sport Comp, they're a pale copy of some kind. A bargain basement version that is not the same as the one that you will buy over the counter. Now, the comments section was just full of comments telling me that these tyres are counterfeit copies, they're not safe, tread depth was mentioned. Seriously, it got ridiculous. Now, I did delete quite a few because I thought after making that video this is now just going to cause even more confusion, despite how stupid it is. But eventually I gave up for two reasons. One, I just couldn't be bothered anymore, and two, I realised I was going to have to make some inquiries, make a second video to clear this up, and in that case it's probably just as well to leave those comments to run. Now, I'd like to make it clear from the start that this video is made with information supplied directly from Pirelli UK, Pirelli in Italy, Royal Enfield UK and Royal Enfield India. And I would like to say a big thank you to all the staff from those companies that were involved in assisting me. Now, in among some of those comments that were on that video, a certain YouTube video was brought to my attention. I'm not mentioning any names, but the frightening part is that it's had almost 1 million views. Now, this video didn't present any evidence as such. It was basically just a lot of talk. And to all intents and purposes, it was presented as fact based on theory. Now, I'll give the presenter his due. he never actually said that these tyres were dangerous. What he said was that they are basically a watered down version of the real tyre. If you go and buy the real tyre over the counter from a tyre retailer, what that retailer gives you will not be the same product that are fitted to these bikes by Royal Enfield. Now, a big thing was made about the serial numbers on the Royal Enfield tyres and the fact that they were traced to a factory in Brazil. Well, it's no secret that some of these tyres are made in Brazil. It actually says it in big letters on the side of the tyre. It's a legal requirement in some countries. So I'm not really sure why all the detective work was required for that part of the video, but there you go. Now, the crux of this video was that Royal Enfield had done a deal with Pirelli to make some tyres that look like Pirelli Phantoms but are a cheaper version. They have less tread on them. They only have 3mm tread on them instead of the usual 5mm tread that you will find on proper sports comp Phantom tyres. Now, the only thing that he really did say about these tyres is because they had less tread on them, they wouldn't last quite as long as a standard tyre, which I suppose sort of makes sense, but then there might be a reason for that, and I'll cover that off before the end of the video. Now, the suggestion was that they knock 2mm of tread depth off on these tyres to save money, to make the tyre cheaper. Now, let's just think about that for a moment. The biggest expense of constructing these tyres is the actual manufacture. Rubber's pretty cheap, so knocking like 5% of the amount of rubber that you would normally put into the tyre off isn't going to make a great deal of difference to the price of that tyre. It's only going to be pennies, because apart from that little bit of rubber that's been missed off, that tyre still has to go through exactly the same manufacturing process. So even if they're buying, say, 1,000 tyres, they will be lucky if that saves them £500. Now, in the case of Pirelli and Royal Enfield, if they did make this change to that tyre, they're significantly altering the specification of the tyre, so it would have to go through type approval again, which potentially costs millions of pounds, and they may have to wait a year or so for it to go through that type approval. Does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't make sense to me, and Royal Enfield and Pirelli tell me it doesn't make sense to them either. Now, let's suppose they decided to be naughty and they decided not to go through type approval and hope that no one notices. Except in this case, it appears someone has noticed. These tyres would technically be illegal. There is no approval in place for them. In a lot of countries, that's a criminal offence on a monumental scale when you're selling hundreds or thousands of motorcycles. You're looking at jail time, you're looking at millions of pounds worth of fines, all for the sake of saving a few £100. Seriously? Now, in the video it was suggested that the tread depth was measured with a coin. I tried it with a coin and I couldn't get any sense out of it. There were no measurements on the coin to suggest how deep the tread was, so I used a tread depth gauge. And yes, the tread depth on the front tyre of the Interceptor is 3mm. Now, I'm not sure if I'm the only one that noticed, but in that video, the tyre that was demonstrated as being a German-made tyre that was bought from a tyre retailer wasn't like for like. It wasn't a front tyre, it was clearly a rear tyre. And the rear tyre tread depth on all Pirelli Phantom sports comps are 5mm. The reason being that the rear tyre is the drive tyre, so it suffers more wear than the front tyre, and so it has a couple of extra millimetres tread depth to even up the wear. And so you've got to ask yourself a question. Number one, why didn't he actually show you the measurements? And number two, why didn't he compare like for like? Why did he compare a rear tyre with a front tyre to prove his point? Is it because measuring a front tyre of a comparable size would have just given the same 3mm tread depth? Now, my Triumph T120 also has Phantoms fitted, so to check this conspiracy theory out, complete with tinfoil hat, I measured the tread depth on those tyres as well and got pretty much the same results. 3mm on the front and 5mm on the rear. So it would appear that both Triumph and the Chinese manufacturers are in on the same conspiracy. Now, the country of manufacture has nothing to do with the quality of the tyre. The German and the Chinese Pirelli factories make radials. The rear tyre on the T120 is a radial, so it was made in China. Whereas the front tyre on the T120 and both tyres on the Interceptor are cross-ply tyres, so they were made in Brazil, because all of Pirelli's cross-ply tyres are made either in Indonesia or Brazil. And the country of manufacture has nothing to do with the quality of the tyre, it's purely dependent on whether you want a cross-ply or a radial. The Interceptor has cross-ply tyres fitted, so it can't have tyres from Germany because Germany only makes the radial tyres. So the connotation that it was an inferior tyre because it was made in Brazil was complete and utter guff. It's not a conspiracy to defraud the customer. So what we've established is that in that video, not only was he comparing a rear tyre with a front tyre, he was comparing a radial rear tyre with a cross-ply front tyre, which in the greater scheme of things proves absolutely nothing, other than that presenter either failed to do any meaningful research or he was intentionally trying to mislead the viewers. You decide which it was. The reality of this situation is it doesn't matter what the reasons were. This is the internet. The internet is full of rubbish and lies because there's nothing in place to monitor or moderate what people do and say on the internet. It was thrown at me several times in the comments that this information must be right because it was from one of the biggest motorcycle channels on YouTube. Now, the size of a channel and smooth talking and editing is no indicator of quality of content. It just means that they've found a way of making themselves popular, and that's all it means. Manipulating the YouTube algorithms. And even for the layman, there were plenty of indicators that what was being said wasn't right. He said that the Pirelli Phantom is a $250 tyre. It isn't. The average price for one of these tyres in the States is no more than $140. You can get a set of these tyres for $250. The warning signs were there that what was being said wasn't right, yet people still fall for it. Now, I'm sure you've read the official statement from Pirelli that I've been showing for the last couple of minutes. They have a reputation to protect. They also have the safety of their customers to protect. They cannot go around making substandard tyres just in order to make a deal with a manufacturer of a motorcycle. Royal Enfield dealt with me on the telephone. We spoke altogether for well over an hour, I think. 2 different telephone conversations. They reiterated what Pirelli had said, that the tyres they fit to the bikes are exactly the same tyres that you would be able to buy over the counter from a tyre retailer, and the only criteria that dictates whether they buy their cross-plies from Indonesia or Brazil is which of the 2 factories are able to supply them in the quantities they require. It's got nothing to do with price or quality. Now, I would urge people to please think for yourselves. Do your own research. Don't just take YouTube videos or other social media posts at face value. This is a clear example of a bit of duff information being given out, which has then grown into a huge conspiracy in people's minds, simply because no one checked out the facts themselves, even though half of the correct information was there right in front of them. The internet and social media has been around long enough for us to know that we can't trust it. So don't trust it. Don't put your blind trust into any social media subject without checking the facts out yourself, especially if you're making a decision that's going to cost you money. That video must have been responsible for hundreds, if not thousands, of people wasting perfectly good tyres based on incorrect information. Now, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that, despite the evidence I've shown you here, will still not be convinced by what I've said. And all I can say to those people is, I do offer a very comprehensive range of tinfoil hats in all the latest styles at very competitive prices if you're interested. Terms and conditions apply. Right, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get some flack on this video, so I'll go and get my flak jacket on and wait for the comments to come rolling in. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video and in doing so helping to support this channel. I hope you have at least found it enlightening or useful. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and if you are subscribed, make sure that your notifications are enabled in your settings. I will, as usual, be back next week, so until then, if you have to ride, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.